Now, I want you to come with me along the King's Road in Finland. Now, these were not Finnish kings, since they never had one. We went on the road that the Swedish kings and the Russian kings followed when they were not warring with each other, that is. In any event, we went to a lot of charming little towns, never did find out what the kings were stopping in those particular towns for, but we had a very good time, and I'm sure you will too. That part of Finland is just lovely and charming. And here we are on the beginning of a trip to beautiful Finland. Very typical, but very foggy, misty, moisty, shall we say, in Naantali, which is a suburb of Turku. Now, Turku was the old Swedish capital of what is now Finland, and it's at the beginning of what is called the Royal Road. The Royal Road began in Oslo or Stockholm, or Oslo probably, and went across to St. Petersburg, meaning this is the road that the kings took when they wanted to visit one capital after another. Helsinki didn't exist at the time because this is relatively a young country, but you get a sense of what the terrain is like. Lots of birches, lots and lots of evergreens, and it's, oh, we're in a spa, by the way, with its very own, of course, sauna and swimming pools, or if you want to, you can jump in the lake. So go jump in the lake isn't exactly a bad thing to do here, particularly after you've had a sauna. Let's go take some more looks at this place. And this is Turku Castle, medieval, about 700 years old. And actually, they tell us that it was originally on an island, but that Finland is rising, and some of it is landfill, but much of it has to do with how much the ground swells or comes up out of the sea, or whatever they say about it. In any event, it's a very impressive old castle, and we're going to go inside. Yes, this is the inside of the castle, so you can see how it's been added to over the years. Well, 700 years, I guess. Nothing stays the same. Fascinating the way it's built. And here is inside the castle. You can see the wonderful fresco kind of like drawing and the metal inserts. But the particular kind of very Scandinavian design is what is really interesting. Just going into the Handicraft Museum, and this is a live handicraft. Is this made here?
Yes.
Yes? You see many of the people, young people in Finland, speak English. Really older, they don't, I guess.
Yes,
yeah?
That's right.
Yes? But many do. But that's good, because Finnish is an impossible language for anyone else. And this is inside the Handcraft Museum. 18th century buildings that have been here, not moved in, but been here ever since they were built. And these wonderful lilacs. It's just, it gives one a sense of history being inside. Well, if you don't believe this is Handicraft Museum, you're going to see everything. Well, maybe you won't see it all, but they're starting to plant the tobacco here. And inside, it's probably pretty dark, they will spin it and press it, because this is what they make here, is chewing tobacco, not plain old smoking or anything. How many people have you seen chew tobacco in recent years? We're standing in the middle of Turku, which is about the fourth or fifth largest city in Finland, in Market Square, right smack in the middle of town. And they have this market every day. They sell produce, but I must tell you, I think I'm coming over here to get my avocados. They're about 18 or 20 cents a piece. They come from Israel. And these white asparagus that you see here, my absolute favorites, are about 90 cents for this bunch. I think I'd like to buy about 3 bunches and take them for dinner wherever we go, because they didn't have them on the menu last night. I don't know whether they will tonight. But aren't they beautiful? And the strawberries are the sweetest I have ever eaten, and that includes Jersey berries. They're not quite as dark red, but I tell you, the perfume of them and the taste is just marvelous. And tell us your name again, would you please, this lovely lady in Lovisa?
Thank you. My name is Anna Margareta Clayhills. I am born 1708.
We didn't have video in those days, but we'll do the best we can.
Oh, and I will show you this town in 18th and 19th century.
Thank you so much. We'll follow you along. And now we're seeing an 18th century fortress. Notice how thick those walls are. They really were serious about keeping the Russians out. Russian border used to be just about 13 kilometers from here. Now it's 100. But at the time they were serious. This was Sweden, don't forget. This part of Finland belonged to Sweden, or was part of Sweden, and they didn't want the Russians invading their space, so they built thick walls like this, and the old King's Road went right here between this and another fortress that... Well, aside from that, we're going to meet another man from the 18th century. This one is a Russian immigrant, and your name is?
Arseni Terikop.
Arseni Terikop. Wow, that's a mouthful.
Eastern Government, and I for 1830.
1830. All right. Well, instead of trying to explain it all, we can just enjoy his beautiful costume. This is the Lovisa State Museum. And, you know, sometimes Lovisa is spelled with 2 I's and sometimes with 1. That being beside the point, did you ever see any more beautiful tulips than this? When I said it was a colorful town, I wasn't thinking about these, but the way the houses are painted, all these wonderful, fanciful, but always authentic earth colors. And these are the people. Well, that's Queen Lovisa, whose name was given to this city. King Frederick, by the way, the Swedish king, is coming to Lovisa twice this summer. So we're standing on fairly fancy area. The building must be about 18th century, I would gather. It looks to be about that period if I were sort of projecting from Philadelphia. And it's really just a charming little city museum. Called State Museum, but it's nice.
Okay, Ruotsin pyyhtää.
See why I said I couldn't? And we are at the ancient ironworks.
Yes.
19th century, is it?
No, this was established in 1695.
Oh my goodness, it's 17th century. And tell me about this building behind us.
Oh, it's an old smithy, a forge, and it was built in 1745.
And what's your name?
My name is Nina.
Nina, you're going to be on television in Philadelphia.
Oh, great.
Great. I wanted them to see this old ironworks, and now we're going in and have a cup of coffee, so that'll be even better.
Oh.
Thanks so much. We are in Hamina, the town that is close, the Finnish town that is closest to the Russian border. And they've had really an interesting background. It's been Finnish, Swedish, well, it didn't become Finnish till last century. Swedish and Russian and Swedish. And finally, it's now settled down as Sweden. But the last time they had a fight with the Soviet Union, really, it went on for several years, from 39 to 44. But it is now very tranquil. It's only about, 13 kilometers from the Russian border. And you can see in many ways there's a Russian influence in the architecture. This light blue church is a Lutheran church. Of course, it was Catholic when the town was founded many years ago. And then the Reformation came. And there's this church, and then around the other side of the square is a Greek Orthodox, interestingly, not Russian Orthodox. And it's very colorful and very pretty, and it's a market town. They have a lot of shipping and lots of foreign influence in this. It's only about 10,000 people in the town who live here, but great foreign influence. And here we're looking at a very colorful orange Greek Orthodox church, orange with a green roof. I suppose that's copper that gets that lovely patina of green. And even though it's a Greek Orthodox church, it has an onion dome, which is so typically, not the church itself, but the gatehouse has an onion dome, so typically Russian. And I guess as close as we are to the Russian border, we can expect a number of influences. In any event, Hamina is a charming market town with a port and most gracious people. Well, this town name is Lappeenranta. It is not quite as close to the Russian border as we were earlier. We've sort of veered away, and this is a freshwater port, as Philadelphia is, kind of upriver, and a lot of cruising from this harbor. It's very pretty here, and I'm sure we're going to see some pretty things as we cruise on one of these boats where we're going to have lunch and spend the early part of the afternoon before we take off for Helsinki. Then we'll be in the big city. We'll be off the King's Road as such. But what an enjoyable trip this has been, to go from one small town to another, each of which has some history, some old buildings, and of course some new buildings. This Finland is a very civilized country. Very polite, very pleasant, and boy, do they have wonderful breakfasts. You can eat your whole meal for the day at breakfast time with ham and eggs, well, boiled eggs, nobody cooks eggs for you, and herring, and sweets, and fruits and vegetables, wonderful tomatoes and cucumbers. Can you imagine for breakfast? They're delicious. Okay, so let's see what more we have to do. Just outside the museum up here, which was obviously made of one of the barracks of the fortress, is this environmental art, which has been quarried in such interesting shapes and placed in such an artistic fashion. At the entrance of the museum, at the back end of the museum, are black slabs of some kind of stone. This stone, with all the mica in it shining, is really a wonderful entrance piece and gives people an idea that they want to go in and see more. And this is inside the tea room of the, or coffee house, I should say, inside the fortress. And you can see the Russian influence. There's a samovar to make the tea or coffee, I'm not really sure which, and these big thick fruit tarts and cheesecake and beautiful pottery, wonderful copper. They really do take their coffee and tea drinking seriously, and it's just a charming place to be. And just as Philadelphia has its day cruises or evening cruises, we're going out on a luncheon cruise from here. Happens to be really quite a lovely day, first one we've had. It's not been terrible, we've not been rained out, but it's been a little gray. And now it is so bright and beautiful. I'm sure it's going to be just lovely on the water. This is certainly a beautiful boat, large and very modern and clean lines, and looks like they have lunch on board and maybe even a full bar. So let's go find out. We're on board the Camilla, going up the canal through beautiful greenery. You can see why I say it looks like Maine. There's all these evergreens. And we're approaching a lock. So we'll be raised, I think, or lowered, I'm not sure which, we'll see, 14 feet, 14 meters. I guess that's about 45 feet. It's between this canal and the lake that we're headed to. So well, canal locks are pretty much the same no matter where you go, but it's sort of fun to do them in different countries and with certainly different from the Panama Canal, I'll tell you that. Size of the locks are very different too. We're approaching it right now. Actually, we were in the lake and we're headed toward the Gulf of Finland. And I don't know whether we'll stop any place, I doubt it, but we'll be going through Russia if we went all the way, which we're not. It's quite a long 4.5-hour trip. But here we're approaching the lock, as you can see. And also, as you can see, if you saw our video on Panama, very different terrain. Here you have birches and evergreens, and there you have tropical vegetation. This is the Finnish National Museum, a handsome traditional building. It's closed for renovation. Everybody's getting ready for everything in town, including the hall across the way, which we're not going to get to see because it's in serious exterior renovation. It was designed by Alvar Aalto, not this museum. This is obviously very old and very traditional, but the Finlandia Hall was designed by one of Finland's most famous architects. It's all torn apart. We'll go see if we can find some things that aren't torn apart. And here is the Modern Art Museum. I'm going to tell you in a couple of minutes, once we see the inside, who was the American architect who beat out all the Finnish architects who have set the standard for contemporary architecture for years. Eero Saarinen and Alvar Aalto. And they were startled beyond belief that an American beat them out for the design of this contemporary museum. It's handsome, though. That very distinguished and handsome-looking military man was Marshal Mannheim, who was first president of Finland when it gained its independence from Russia in 1917. He's still very much of a hero because he set the tone for Finland. They're honorable people and they're serious people, but they like to have fun too. Stephen Hall is the American who was the architect for this building. And he's from New York. He must have spent a lot of time at the Guggenheim because it sure reminds me of it with these ramps where you can get off or keep on trucking. Meantime, we're going to go see an exhibit.
I'm going to get big. I'm going to get real big. And I'm going to knock you down. And you'll be sorry.
This installation in Studio K is by Polly Apfelbaum, who is an American artist, and they read all kinds of stuff into her work, like representative of Americans. She dyes and sews and makes a statement about feminist things. And it's kind of interesting the way she does it. You really have a feeling you're in the presence of a real person. I think I was wrong about the other installation. This is Polly Apfelbaum. She dyes the work, she puts it together, she sews it together, she sticks it down, whatever she does, but it becomes a very startling installation. Guggenheim Museum in New York. Very attractive. No paintings along the walls, though. Well, maybe they will sooner or later, and maybe they won't. We're in Capelli, a typically Finnish restaurant in the park. And it's a brasserie, too. Brasserie meaning that they actually make beer here. I don't know if you can see how big the glasses of beer are that they ordinarily serve. Good Finnish beer, good food, charming place in the park, right close to department stores and all manner of things, museums, etc. And this is Capelli from the outside. You see how turn of the century it is. Really, it looks like Finland. This is the official shop. It's almost like a museum of Finnish design. This wall hanging is stunning. It's pressed fabric. Doesn't it look three-dimensional? It's not. It's flat. And this is Helsinki's cathedral. It's a landmark building. I mean, everybody points to it when they say, well, you know, across from the cathedral, down the street from the cathedral. And sort of across the way from the cathedral is the government building, which, along with many other buildings in Helsinki, is under reparation, again in preparation for the year 2000. And this is the famous Market Square in Helsinki. Again, it's something that everybody knows. It's a center for activity. Goes on every single morning right here on the edge of the harbor. And mostly it's vegetables and fruits and fish. Smoked fish and all kinds of things. Let's go take a look. And here is the first fruits of the season, the strawberries. The darkest red ones are 20 a pint or a liter, and the sort of bright red ones that we're more used to are only 10, and then something that's about the same. Oh, these are from Belgium. These are bright red, but big. Gonna have to taste some sooner or later. And these are handcrafts from Lapland. See the reindeers knitted into the hats. They're all handmade, of course. Not cheap, but really pretty. And last night we were at a Lapland restaurant, which was unusual. Eat reindeer tongue, and well, it is a different world. And here I am standing next to, lots and lots of minks. Mink hats for men, for women, mink jackets, etc. The Finnish furs are simply beautiful, but I don't think I want to bring any home. I think people would be very upset with me. And if you'd just like to have a pelt to put on the floor or something, there's a pooch who seems very comfortable lying on his pile of. And this is the old Russian church from the days when Finland belonged to Russia. And this too is a landmark. You see really stunning architecture, very Russian in feeling. Now we're in Estonia, on the outskirts of Tallinn, in a market that runs on a daily basis. And when I asked what I should come for, our taxi driver said because it's cheap. Well, they have a few nice things. They have this beautiful crystal, some of it from Estonia, some of it from Czechoslovakia, some of it from, I don't know, but there is some very pretty lead crystal, which I might put some flowers in, but I wouldn't drink out of it at this point. I think they're saying that it's dangerous. However, it's interesting to see, particularly in a marketplace where regulars shop, and many of the Finns come over here because things are supposedly much less expensive. And there's everything in this market, and all kinds of people selling, people who look like they do in a flea market at home, and some who don't. But they sell vegetables, and they sell Nikes, and they sell clothing that looks a little bit used. They have some things that are theoretically antiques. My feeling is that people are selling them out of their home, but we'll go take a look. And here you see some of the things that are theoretically at least antiques. Samovars and icons and pottery or china and some crystal as well. I'm going to look at some of the brass because I think it's interesting shapes, and I think it's you can see the Russian writing. Estonian writing is not like that, and we'll see how I fare. Now, the only part of Finland I haven't seen or been to is Lapland, and I hope we're going to save that for another trip, because I've certainly enjoyed the parts I have seen. I love Helsinki, and I love the small towns, and I love the fish. Smoked salmon and fresh fish are simply divine. Enjoy Finland, I'm sure you will. This is Barbara Ann Rosenberg, your roving reporter with travel and table tips.